Quick fun fact. Way back in the day, they used to use public roads for official German races. Not like street circuits like we know today, they just took a right turn in fifth gear and rolled into your grandmother's house because it had a perfect high-speed corner by it. The Nürburgring. The track's so nice they built it thrice. Thrice? They call it the Ring, a fitting name since it's killed as many people as that movie would have if that creepy little girl was real.
Mom, I don't know.
An engineer.
The motorsport mecca loved by Max to Michael started construction in the mountains of the Rhineland 100 years ago this September. And with International GT starting its 24 hours of the Nürburgring tomorrow, let's get a refresher on why the Nürburgring is one of the best circuits ever built. Here are a few of the most famous stories from the track and find out why we won't be getting to enjoy any Formula One cars racing on it anytime soon. We've got a lot of tracks switching in and out of rotation in the Formula One calendar the past few years, whether it's due to Liberty Media wanting more street circuits because they draw bigger crowds, or countries losing their spot because they wanted to play Hearts of Iron IRL. Seeing different tracks has sometimes been refreshing, with the Las Vegas Grand Prix bringing some of the best races in recent memory, even if the organizers and atmosphere of Vegas ruin it for the fans who just want to see the race. Then there's Jeddah. Built on slave labor and designed to be fast, but with no forethought. They put up walls almost as close as Monaco. It's always a crash waiting to happen. Due to the closure of most of the world in 2020, we did get a special race at the Nürburgring called the Eiffel Grand Prix, showing us just how good of a race is being kept out of our hands. We'll get into why it has a weird name that year later. Let's take a look at the Eifel Mountain region. Drivers raced the Taunus circuit 3 times in the early 1900s and gathered in 1922 for the first annual Eifelrennen race. By 1925, the growing motorsport culture around the area spurred local enthusiasts into building a permanent circuit. After racing in those gorgeous German hills for 20 years, they saw the Monza and Targa Florio courses of Italy dominating the racing world and knew Eifel had the potential to outdo them all. The setup for the track took a lot of inspiration from the aforementioned Targa Florio course, as it was the most important race event at the time. However, instead of racing between city blocks, they were cutting through forested mountains with 1,000 feet of elevation changes and 174 bends. So while still exhilarating, there was less risk of hitting a wall than at the Targa. Construction of the track finished in 1927, with the maiden race taking place in June. The opening day events showed motorcycles and sidecars. The second day, the track was open to multiple classes of cars and was an instant hit. Spectators and drivers alike understood that something truly special had been built here. The stage was set, and now what was needed were the stories to fill it. The 1935 German Grand Prix was the real-life motorsport equivalent to Rocky Balboa. Tazio Nuvolari was racing in an Alfa Romeo P3 monoposto against the much more dominant Auto Union Tipo Bs and Mercedes. Mercedes had won first place every race so far in the season, and only Auto Union looked like a serious competitor for them. Just to give you an idea how ridiculous this was, the Mercedes and Tipo Bs had new 375 brake horsepower engines, while the Alfa Romeo still had the old 265 brake horsepower setup. That's almost 2/3 the power of their competition. It was estimated 300,000 German fans, including some of the most powerful and high-ranking Third Reich officers, showed up for the race, expecting a 4th continuous German win. Nuvolari had a rough start and lost a position immediately, and both of his teammates were out of the race by the 5th lap. This meant Nuvolari was now 3rd place and driving the only Alfa Romeo left on the track. He used a lucky stroke of rain combined with miraculous tire management and fought up to 1st position by lap 10, outlasting the Mercedes for pit stops. Unfortunately, when he did have to pit, there was a broken pressure pump delaying his refuel by over 2 minutes. He rejoined in 6th place, 6 minutes behind pole, but did not lose his eye on the ball, or should I say, you know those moments when something unbelievable happens. You watch it with your very eyes, but your brain knows the information must be wrong, but you just hope it's right. This was one of those unforgettable moments. He fought up the field, and by the start of the last lap, found himself in 2nd. 35 seconds behind the lead driver. That driver was Manfred von Brauchitsch in a Mercedes. The pressure NEWburgring had kept up all race had forced von Brauchitsch to push his car all out, causing a tire blowout on the last lap. NEWburgring blasted past the checkered flag, winning what is now known as the impossible victory. He finished ahead of 8 silver arrows, and the crowd erupted at the underdog victory. While high-ranking Germans were pissed, and von Brauchitsch was reportedly inconsolable after the race. The hosts had been so surprised by the win, they had not brought a copy of the Italian national anthem to play at the podium, only the German one. They also had brought a giant wreath made to fit the larger Germans and not the smaller NEWburgring. The spectacle of the 1935 German Grand Prix alone would cement this track into history, and at one point it looked like that would be the only memorable event held there, as racing was paused in 1939 when Germany started crashing out for the second time that century. It's like when a guy keeps causing fights at a party, so his buddies put him in an Uber, but he shows back up like an hour later and starts another fight.
You get yourself a double cheese with fries for $2.95, faggot.
In 1947, motorsports continued, but Germany was still on timeout until 1951. Racing finally returned to Germany, and in 1953, the ADAC added the first endurance race to the Nürburgring, the 1,000-kilometer Nürburgring endurance race. However, it was still one of the least safe tracks to race on at the time. In 1967, a chicane was added before the start-finish straight, called Hohenrain, but it still picked up the nickname the Green Hell by Jackie Stewart.
This is the section where I usually have my practice accidents. 2 years ago in a Porsche I hit an Alfa Romeo service car. And then last year I hit a local.
It earned this nickname in blood, having taken over 40 lives by this point. But what made this track so dangerous compared to others? Part of the problem is the length of the track, making it nearly impossible for drivers to memorize and master the entire racing line.
I don't know, it's going straight over the hill. I don't know.
Not to mention, the size of the track also allows drivers to push their cars all out for extended periods of time, increasing strain on driver and car alike. These factors, with the lack of runoff areas, means that if you do make a mistake, you will almost certainly plow straight into a barrier with no gravel or space to slow you down. In 1970, Formula One drivers boycotted the Nürburgring unless changes were made, and when they could not be completed on time, the German Grand Prix was moved to the Hockenheimring, which had already made safety improvements. To meet the drivers' request, the track was smoothed out by removing bumps, some of the more sudden jumps, installing Armco safety barriers, and straightening out the track to follow the racing line. These changes allowed the German Grand Prix to return for the 1971 season. Safety improvements were still needed, though. In 1973, the entrance into the Kallenhard corner was made slower by adding another left-hand corner into Metzgesfeld. They also widened and removed jumps from the main straight. These were not enough, and with each year, the Formula cars were getting faster and faster and could find themselves literally flying off the track. The 1970s proved the Nürburgring could not afford to, or in some cases physically could not meet all of the FIA safety requirements. When change after change couldn't fully resolve the problem, it was decided early in the season that the 1976 race would be the Nürburgring's last. If only they'd decided sooner. Niki Lauda, the world champion who started his career with a loan against his own life insurance policy. He always understood that the sport he loved came with a built-in risk, and every time he got into the car, he accepted that risk. He also was an incredible driver. Being the first driver to complete the Nordschleife in under 7 minutes meant he knew this track intimately. So when he raised concerns about the bad weather brewing for the race that was already planned to cancel, you would think his fellow racers would have listened to him. He understood the seriously low number of marshals and safety professionals and vehicles increased the risk by an enormous amount. Unfortunately, the race went on, and during the second lap, Lauda hit an embankment, burst into flames, and then made contact with another car. One of the drivers who pulled Lauda out said he had to wait until Lauda passed out to pull him from the car, as his panicking and pressing against the restraints made them impossible to undo. Another driver who wasn't even involved in the crash noted that after he stopped his own car, it took safety vehicles another 5 minutes to arrive on the scene. Lauda was given last rites at the hospital after suffering intense burns to his legs, hands, and face, as well as inhaling toxic burning fumes. This absolute beast of a man showed up to a press conference 6 weeks later to announce his plan to return, which he did after only missing 2 races. Can you imagine being in a life-changing, horrific accident worthy of making a movie about, and you go back to being a top-level athlete less than 2 months later? No, you can't, because you're not Niki Lauda. This man went on to become champion again in the 1977 season, left Formula One, founded a successful company, and came back to Formula One to win another championship. They didn't include that in the Rush movie because people would have thought it was an exaggeration. He remains the only driver to have won a World Drivers' Championship with both Ferrari and McLaren. Unless Lando or Oscar have an accident and Kimi Räikkönen has to step in for a 1-year revenge tour. After sponsors watch their logo advertise a man being burned alive,
God damn it, all I'm trying to do is get you into a Toyota.
what hopes the ring had left for staying open were gone. To meet safety requirements of staffing alone, the Nordschleife needed 6 times the amount of marshals as the average circuit, and the owners found that the only way to make the track work was to build a new one. In 1981, work began, which was built on and around the old pit area. At the same time, a bypass shortened the Nordschleife to 13 miles and with an additional small pit lane. This version was used for races while construction was going on nearby, like the 1,000-kilometer Nürburgring endurance race. The new track added runoff areas. They smoothed out yet more bumps and jumps throughout the track and replaced bushes and hedges with Armco and grass, and added racing line markers to every corner. The new track was completed in 1984 and named GP Streck, which is literally German for Grand Prix course. German engineers may be excellent, but they're a cocky group of nerds, that's for sure.
You're a fucking nerd. You're a fucking nerd. No one likes you.
They had a maiden race titled the 1984 Nürburgring Race of Champions. The lineup was a who's who of world champions and survivors of the dangerous racing of the day. The shiny brand new track hosted the 1984 European Grand Prix and the 1985 German Grand Prix, because Formula One has literally never been good with names. Formula One did not stay, however, but there was no shortage of racing series that loved the chance of such a premier track. Trucks, vintage motorcycles, the DTM series, and even rock concerts filled the venue's calendar. You know, Formula One loves its Germans, and after Michael Schumacher won his first world title in 1994, they brought back the European Grand Prix to the redesigned Nürburgring. Except, of course, for 1997 and 1998 when it was called the Luxembourg Grand Prix, before switching back. Bernie, what the f***? Speaking of Bernie, his rising Formula One license fees and keeping ticket prices high caused the Nürburgring and Hockenheimring to actually lose money on race weekends, and made the two tracks decide it was easier to alternate. This was, unfortunately, the hazard lights in the fog. We got 4 races before the alternating deal of 2007 fell through, as after the 2013 German Grand Prix, the new owners of the Nürburgring were unable to secure a deal to continue hosting, and future races were cancelled.
Wie bitte? Entschuldigung. Sie Wichser.
This was a major disappointment to fans and drivers alike, as everyone from Hamilton and Verstappen to Buemi and Hartley loved the track and wanted nothing but more races located there. In 2020, when the world had a lot on its plate, weird, 2020 and the Axis keep popping up in my videos. Anyway, when we were all wearing basketball shorts to work, we got an alternate race schedule that ended up maybe a little bit better than our regular schedule. Partly because it held the 2020 Luxembourg, the Eifel Grand Prix. It's a mountain range now. Why not call it the Nürburgring Grand Prix, the Rhineland Grand Prix, or my favorite, the Cockham Grand Prix? We saw Hamilton win the Cockham Grand Prix and equal the amount of wins Schumacher holds there. Touching. And then it was ripped away from us as quickly as it was given. You may be wondering, why doesn't F1 stay there if it's so beloved? And the answer, as always, is money. The most recent bid to host a Formula One race was answered just 6 months ago, but this time we got a little more information as to why. It costs the organizers 30 million euros for a race weekend. Places like Monaco and Miami and Monza with tourism and rich people traps can afford to make that up. But a racetrack located in the mountains that doesn't have much else in terms of entertainment can't make that feasible. Which is ridiculous when you look at how much money is going into the sport nowadays. The street circuit moneymakers should be subsidizing races that the fans love instead of just lining the pockets of the FIA.
This principle made me a multimillionaire.
No, stealing millions of dollars from your ex-business partner is what made you a millionaire, Frank.
Imagine the value added to the sport if we could alternate between street circuits, permanent modern circuits, and classic circuits in a balanced and enjoyable way.
So beautiful.
Until Formula One management can get its spending problem under control and stop fining drivers for breathing and charging racetracks for existing, we're going to keep losing any historic tracks we have left. Except Monaco. I have a theory that the real reason we keep Monaco is just to keep the drivers reminded of who pays the bills and not to get out of line, or Mohammed bin Sulayem will make the entire calendar 22 Monaco circuits. I'm just rambling now, so like and subscribe. New videos every weekend, new shorts every week. Don't forget to file your taxes. Oh, it's June. Oh, fuck.